we're back for video 2 in our Horse Club video series, and we are excited to have Dr. Leanne Dillard, the Extension Forage Specialist with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, back with us today. Thank you for joining us again for our second video.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're so excited that you're here, and we are learning all about hay today. So let's just start out with what makes hay good.
Well, hay, first of all, forages in general are necessary to make a horse's digestive system happy. So at least 1% of their diet should be in forage. And a lot of times that's in hay because it's convenient or because our pasture is just not able to support during certain times of the year how much forage a horse needs. So what makes hay good is it has pretty much everything a horse needs. So like I said, they do need some amount of forage and roughage in their diet for nutritional help, but also what makes it good is we have things here like this perennial peanut hay. You see all these leaves. These leaves have proteins in them that are really, really good. This is some alfalfa that's also the same. And then even in our grass hays, they have carbohydrates, both soluble carbohydrates, which are like sugars, which are good, but also fiber, which is good for the horse. And that's what makes this all very good for our horses.
So what would be considered bad hay?
So there are unfortunately some hays out there that are not of very high quality. And horses in particular, you really need to pay attention of what your quality of your hay is. Now a lot of people pay attention to color and smell. Those are very important. So you always, when you're buying hay, want to look at it. What color is it? If it's green, it's good, but just because it's not green doesn't mean it's not bad. Sometimes hay will get sun bleach and that doesn't mean it's bad if it's not a bright green color. You also want to check it to see how leafy it is. Leaves are where all the good stuff are, so the leafier, the better. I have some examples here of some hay that probably is not the best quality of hay. Here is an example, and you can see this has some really dark pieces. These are weeds, and that means this is pretty low quality hay. We want to avoid anything that looks weedy and has different types of plants in there. Here's another example of a hay that's pretty low quality. We can just tell that by looking at it because it's very, you see, I don't see a lot of leaves. It's a lot of straw. Kind of looks like what you would think about a hay bale when you take a hay ride, and that's not what we want. We don't want straw. We want this fine leaf stem stuff. But really, the only way to tell if hay is bad is by doing a forage test and determining it. Before you buy your hay, you should always ask for your forage report from the seller or take your own so that you can see how much protein, carbohydrates, and other nutrients are in there for your horse.
When should you feed hay?
So that's an excellent question. So there's a bunch of different scenarios in which feeding hay is important. The number one would be during the winter when there's not enough pasture to support your horse. So you can tell that based on in the fall, depending on what type of system you have. If you have a bunch of warm season grasses, so you have a lot of pasture that's green during the summer, you'll notice that during the fall and over the winter, there's not going to be any grass in your pasture. So you want to make sure that's when you're feeding hay. Sometimes if you have a horse that's in a stall and you're keeping the horse in the stall, you'll need to give it hay in order to meet that forage requirement that you're not getting it from being pasture. Having said that though, even for all horses, whether they're working or not, pasture is an excellent way for them to get exercise and get fresh air, and in that they're able to consume enough forage to meet their demand.
How do you know how much hay to feed?
So it's really going to depend on several different factors. One is going to be the weight of your horse, which you can do either by using scales, or there are tape measures you can use that are special that you measure at certain places and you can get an estimate of your horse's weight. It's also going to be dependent on how much exercise your horse is doing. So if you have a horse that's not ridden very often, that's just in the pasture, it's not going to need as much hay because it doesn't have a large energy requirement. If you have a horse that you're riding, doing rodeo every single weekend or going on cross-country trails several times a month, then that's a horse that's going to need more hay. In general, we're going to say a horse needs 2 to 3% of their body weight in feed a day in dry matter, and half of that needs to be in hay or some kind of forage. So based on how much your horse is exercising. Also, it's important to know, we have to use our forage test to know exactly what's in our hay. So in some scenarios, we may have enough energy in our hay to meet the demands and the horse doesn't need any supplementation. In other scenarios, we don't. So it's important to know exactly how much you need. You need to have your forage test in order to calculate how much your horse needs to eat.
So what do people mean when they say horse hay?
So that's an excellent question. So most people, when they're talking about horse hay, what they're talking about is just high quality hay. Since horses are hindgut fermenters and they're not have the digestive system of a ruminant like cattle, they're not able to fully digest low quality hay. So you want to make sure that hay is high quality. You're also, if you know that you're probably going to pay for this because it is going to be less weedy and more less mature than other hays, but you want to make sure you have good quality hay. It's very important because something like colic can happen because a hay is overly mature or because there's other materials in the hay, trash for example. So you want to make sure hay quality for horses is very high. And so when someone's talking about horse hay, they're usually talking about a higher quality hay than that you would be feeding to cattle.
So Dr. Dillard, why do some people choose to feed round bales and some people choose to feed square bales?
So again, that's an excellent question, and it really depends on a couple of different factors. First of all is what size facility do you have? Do you only have a couple of horses, or do you have horses and cattle? Because you want to only feed the amount of hay that your livestock can consume in 1 to 2 days. Because the longer the hay sits out, the more weathered it will be, and a lot of it's wasted. So a lot of times horse owners feed square bales because they only have a couple of horses. Another reason is because of tractors. So if you're on a farm that has access to a tractor, you have to have a tractor to pick up a round bale. So, but a lot of horse facilities, again, because they only have 1 or 2 horses, may not have a tractor large enough to feed a round bale. So they decide to feed in square bales. In general though, round bales are cheaper per ton than square bales. So if you have the ability to feed round bales, it is a cheaper option, but square bales work great and allow you to feed only a day's worth of hay to 1 or 2 horses at a time.
Dr. Dillard, you've mentioned several times about taking a hay sample. What is that? How do we do it? And what should we do?
So hay samples are really important in order for us to know exactly what's in our hay bale so we can figure out the most economical way to feed our horse. So what you're going to need is a hay probe. You can find this through your regional extension agent, which are located throughout the state. You just call your local county extension office and they can provide you with this probe. And then you'll need some kind of power drill. You can use a manual drill, but this is very difficult, so we suggest a power drill. So all you do is you hook it up, and then what we want to do is we want to make sure we get a sample that covers as much of the bale as possible. So for that reason, we do not want to go in this direction because the way the hay is made, each flake only covers a small portion of the field. So what we want to do is to go through as many flakes as possible. So you're going to take your sample, put it through the butt of the square bale, turn on your drill, and then push as far as it'll go. And depending on how dense the bale is, it may be easier or harder to do. So once you've taken your sample, you want to do this on 10% of the bales which you have in your lot. So when you buy a lot of hay from a farmer, that's going to be, you go to a farm and you tell them you want 20 or 30 bales that you're going to store in your barn over winter. You want to test about 5 of those bales. You're going to take your sample, and the sample from the hay bale is going to be in this metal tube right here. We push this button, we pull this off, and this may be easier said than done. Okay, so you just pop this end off here, and then your hay probe is going to come with a plunger. Now be very careful when you plunge it because these teeth right here are very sharp and you can hurt yourself. That's why this little plastic piece is here. So you're going to stick this through the end that went in the bale first and push out your sample, and you see your sample falling out there. You want to collect that in a Ziploc bag. Do it, like I said, on 10% of the bales that you've bought. Take that Ziploc bag and you're going to mail it to the AU Soil Testing Lab, or take it to your local county extension office and they can help you get it there. They're going to test it and they're going to report back to you how much of your fiber, how much protein, and how digestible it is. And from there, you can work with your local county extension office to calculate how much hay your horse needs and how much supplementation it may need as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dillard, for joining us for our second video. We really appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.